build a form around it. So I'm going to be deconstructing Angular Reactive Forms. So who am I? My name is, don't pay attention to my Tinder dating profile picture, but I'm Sani Yusuf. So I am originally Nigerian, but I've been living in England for a while now. I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and all things web as well, which means Google tends to give me a lot of free tickets to go to like Google I/O. I can't complain. If I could get in, you would probably get in, trust me. I'm also an Angular Bootcamp instructor, so if you've attended any of one of my classes with Angular Bootcamp, woohoo! And before we begin, let's settle this. Avatar is the best movie of all time. If you do not feel like Avatar is the best movie of all time, now's your time to leave. Trust me. By the way, by Avatar I mean like the blue people, not that nonsense that they did like a few years ago. The blue people, 2007. Greatest movie of all time. I love this movie so much I started learning the language. Yes, exactly. So, I'm actually pretty easy to find online. I am at Sani Yusuf everywhere. If you find anyone that looks half as ugly as me using that username, let me know so I can sue them, right? Okay, let's begin. Let's talk about forms. So, forms, right? They are pretty much the most underrated thing like in the world, right? They have the ability to make or break your business. You never thought this was a form, did you? Right? It never occurred to you, right? But when you think about it now, it's a form. This is the world's most expensive form. This is a $700 billion form. Without this one form, there is no business. There is no snooping what people are doing. There's no fiddling around with elections and all of that. Without this one thing, literally. They have the ability to make or break your business. The backbone of everything, our day-to-day, not just businesses, but our day-to-day lives, right? And some of you might not believe me, but you use them every day. You use them every day. Never thought about this one, right? This one that allows a certain person to really scare us every day. And that one where everybody tells you how many kids they have and what they're doing and all of that. And who here thinks that they haven't used the form today? What if you think you haven't used 5 forms today? What about 10? If you feel like you haven't used up to 10 forms today, I can bet you that you have. Even 20. Your address bar. What's that? It's a form. You came to this building, on your way up, you entered the elevator. What did you press? You interacted with a form. Do you know why a radio button is actually called a radio button? Because the old cars had like an actual radio button that you'd press, like 1, 2, 3. So we use forms every single day and we don't even realize that they're forms. When you're about to make a phone call, what are you using? You're using a form, 080, 070. That's a form. So, here's how we're going to start. I'm going to show you some really terrible forms, really bad forms. Does anybody know this type of form? This one? You know, you're about to do something. Maybe you want to pay your money. You want to do something. You just landed on the website and it's already complaining that you've killed somebody. Like, you haven't done anything. You haven't touched any form field, but it's already complaining. You haven't given me your password. You haven't given me your username. Like, give me a bloody chance. Like, let me actually do something first, all right? So this is a terrible form where we haven't interacted with the form yet, but the form is already complaining. And guess what? These colors, these experiences, they're in tune with our actual emotions. Like, have you ever tried to pay for something online and you go on the webpage and the form is like not mobile optimized, and then right there you give up on like paying the stuff, and you're like, I'm actually just gonna go home and do it on my laptop, or like, I'm gonna just use someone else, right? Because when a form stresses you, you actually feel stressed. It's a user experience thing, right? And part of the reasons why people actually do terrible forms like this is like forms are ridiculously difficult to build. They are very difficult, right? What about this one? Who can tell me what they think is wrong here? Exactly. The submit button is enabled even though the form is invalid. So you're just going to go to the server and come back and nothing's going to happen. So it's a waste trip, literally. You just wasted a round trip to the server and back. Right? Sometimes, you know, it's very important you are clear. Like you make it clear what information is mandatory and which one is not. The pattern I actually like to follow is only make the optional fields optional. and just assume or put a little star and just expect that every other thing is mandatory. Label the ones that are optional. And that way the user can be like, okay, if this is optional, that means these ones have to be mandatory. Sometimes, when you're doing call to action or acquisitions, you have to keep the call to action button enabled. Think about Facebook, or email list. They're not going to disable it. It's always active there, right? What about this one? You can tell me what is wrong here. Say that again? Yeah, that's fine. But I'm interacting with my last name, but the first name, the password, and email are complaining, right? You want my information, but you're angry that I'm deciding how I want to give you my information. So you shouldn't really bother, you shouldn't be bothered. You should just say, okay, I'm giving you my last name, fine. You can give me for whatever reason, maybe you want to give me information the way you want to, that's fine. But you should basically focus on only what I'm doing. If I'm typing in the email field, focus on the email field. You've probably been on these websites where literally you're putting the username or you started putting in your password and it's telling you that you haven't given it 8 characters long, and literally you're typing and you're like, what is going on here? Like, I'm giving you the information. Or you're putting your credit card information to pay, and it's like, oh, this is not a valid credit card. Well, of course it's not. I haven't finished. It's 16 characters. So focus on what the user is doing, right? What's it called? So it's very important that you're able to detect when a user has touched a field and has interacted with that field so that you can give them a very custom experience, right? And sometimes order, when you have order is very important. Maybe if you are Amazon and you need the person to give you the postcode first so that you don't waste their time. You just say, look, we don't deliver to you, or we need you to pay extra money, that kind of thing. Then maybe order does matter. Then you can disable this type of, but for the most forms that we use, order shouldn't really matter, right? And this guy, this is the reason why nobody likes doing taxes, right? It's one of those forms, as soon as you see it, you just give up, right? And this is partly why exam freaks people out. There's no one ever that loves to go to sit in an examination, because once you get in there, you see 10 questions which you haven't studied none for, right? And it freaks you out. And that's kind of why sometimes there are a lot of studies around how people universities are creating form fields for exams, they basically put questions on different papers on purpose just to ease you off. Okay, start with this one and all of that. Instead of 70 questions, you have to answer all of them, right? So this is a long form. What you should have is you should progressively allow the user. Maybe they should get their personal details out of the way first, put a little, you have 5 sections. Section 1 is done. Okay, section 2, section 3, give us your cat details, your dog details, things like that, all right? And this one is probably the worst one of them all. And I think everyone here has experienced this one. I want to sign up to this new great social media application and I'm gone. I'm creating my very creative username, man's not hot. And what happens? Dang, dang, dang. Man's not hot is already taken, but guess what? I got to start all over again, right? So not only have you wasted my time, taking me to the server and back, but where's all my information? That's 2 stuff. So everyone has experienced this before at some point, right? So this is what I say to those experiences. It's just, no. Why? In 2019, we should have way much better forms. We should have the ability to create much more empathetic applications, right? The one place actually that one form that I particularly like, and because I travel around the world a lot, but the one form I really, really like is actually TFL. The TFL, what's it called? The little Oyster card. Don't really, I work from home, so you could it's been a while. I don't even know what the machine is called anymore. But yeah, the thing where you go and put the money. Yeah, them ones. The TFL machine, that one, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's actually pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good because it's actually, it allows you to fill and recharge your Oyster card, even though it's very language agnostic as well. So if I'm a French speaker, and I speak multiple languages, so when I look at the TFL, the flags are correct. The the languages, they're all correct. So you can, if you're like, let's say you're an Arabic speaker, for example, you can just recognize Arabic right there and just click it, and then you can progressively fill the form. But also, there's a lot of things we don't really think about with forms. So for example, in a form field, you might do something like put like drinks for like parties or something like that. But maybe some parts of the Middle East, you don't want to use those icons. Maybe use a balloon instead, things like that. So you also have to be like culturally like sensitive as you create forms. So, like I said, the reason why a lot of these forms exist is because, firstly, forms are very difficult to create. And we just don't really know how to do them really well. And I guess this is what Angular Reactive Forms tries to solve. Any Angular developers in the house? Okay. All 5 of us? Any React developers in the house? Any React developers that will happen to open Twitter this weekend? Okay. I think everybody knows what happened, right? But anyways, let's leave that aside. So what I'm going to show is actually it's using Angular Reactive Forms, but you don't necessarily need to be an Angular developer to kind of get the gist of it, right? So Reactive Forms is a module that Angular gives you. And Angular is one of those technologies that pretty much is like, it gives you everything. It's like, you got to do it my way or no way. It's like you're using Angular all through, right? It's not quite like React where it's sort of like, tapas, sort of like only what you need and okay, it is kind of tapas, right? Like, sort of like, only what you need. If you need something else, you go get it. While Angular is just like, here's everything, and then, and it's 2 different, approaches. And I actually love it because React is more speed, while Angular is more, I'll give you the heavy thing. Then when I'm building your application, I'll use 3 shaking and take out what you don't actually need. So it's just 2 different things. So the one thing that Reactive Forms gives you is the ability to observe, right? You can observe what a user's doing. You can see, have they touched this field? Have they not touched this field? Where are they? Do they have to fill certain information? What if I want my form field to have this characters long, right? Have they done that? Has the user done that? So you can observe how the user is using your actual HTML form. And then that, in turn, allows you to be empathetic, right? It allows you to have empathy, because a form is supposed to guide a user to fill in information. And in this day and age where data is the new oil, it's very, very, very critical for everything we do, right? If you basically are waste the people, they will not give you their data today. So you need to you have to be nice, like, hey, give us your data. All right, give us your first name. Hey, by the way, if you actually enable location, will give you a much better experience, that kind of thing. I think now when you go to every web page, the first thing you see is location on. Like you go to something like, I don't know, like the government's website and location on. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll enable it. It's that kind of thing. So composability is another one. The ability to really, because some of us here work with really complex forms. By the way, who works with your business or where you work, forms are critical? Anyone in the house? Right? Exactly. So a lot of us here, maybe enterprise, it's all about information exchange. So composability is you want to create something that is specific to your company. Your company has a specific experience that you don't want to be rewriting again. And then extendability as well, taking what Angular already has and extending it. Maybe you want to create a different type of form element, right? It was recently, it was at a class, I think 2 years ago in New York, I found out that the radio button actually has 3 states, not 2 states. It's not just checked and unchecked. There's a 3rd state called interdeterminate, basically not checked or checked, which is crazy. But apparently there was one guy that his company needed it, and the W3C spec decided, you got a point, and exactly. So the building blocks of Reactive Forms. Reactive Forms has a bunch of building blocks. Everything starts from what we call the abstract control. That is like the abstract itself. That's the abstract level member. And then from there, you have what you call a form control, which I'll talk about shortly, a form group, and a form array, which gives you a little bit specific types of experiences that you can use to build forms. So let's have a look at the form controls first, how to use Reactive Forms. Firstly, if you're on your Angular application, you'd import the Reactive Forms module to declare that you need it. And for the people that work with React, this might all look like gibberish. Just let it go. It's just like doing import, or require. All right. So form control is like the base level element. you'd create in your class the instance of a form control, and then you attach that form control by attaching the form control property. You bind to it, the form control. So in Angular, whenever you see the square bracket around any property name, you're binding to the property. You're basically enabling Angular. And then you pass the instead of that form control from the view model class or the component class. So you have a one-to-one mapping. And each of this, the form control itself, you can like, so the first parameter there is the initial value. You know, it could be empty or it could be some value you're getting from a database to pre-populate. But also you can have things like validators, for example, which I will show in my code demo. And so you use the form control property. But for a lot of times, you're not really working with one element. You're working with a form element, right? And you have a bunch of elements. And maybe if I click this field, this one should be disabled. You know, all those crazy things. If you've tried to do Airbnb, for example, you can, their forms are pretty messy. By the way, there is a trick in Airbnb. Try zooming in and zooming out. The prices change. Thank me later. Yes. You can tell I'm cheap. I'm Nigerian. Hey, I love my money. So yeah, try zooming in. It actually works. So zooming, because a lot of people that have properties, they have like, because I use Airbnb, they put it on like auto pricing. So if you zoom in, the less properties you see, the prices change. So do that next time you book it. But yeah, when you're working with a form element, you do this. You can use the form element to aggregate, and the form group to aggregate a bunch of elements in the form. And it gives you an object-based API, so you can access the elements as objects. So let's have a look at that quickly. OK. Where is the animation? OK. I command you to animate. Good. OK. So on the class over there, you would create the instance of the form group. This is the imperative way. You know, you create it, and you'd add, like, for example, first name is a member now. It's like a member I'm associating. I'm giving an instance of a form control, right? And you can see, so basically, I'll attach this form group here, instance with that, and then I can just associate first name to this field, like this with form control name, and last name, and things like that. So I'm associating different fields in the context of that particular form control. But the greatest thing about the form group is it doesn't just take, the members don't have to be form controls. They can be any abstract control. So first name could be another form group. So that allows you to really cascade and create really super complex forms, right? And then you have the form array, which is basically just like the form group, but gives you an array-like syntax, so index-based instead of form-based. Nobody really uses it, but yeah, someone somewhere probably needs it. Actually, I use it. That makes me weird. And you have like a declarative way, which is an easier way to actually create the form group, where you can just sort of like create like an object and just pass the form builder, and the form builder will just generate everything for you, right? So, who wants to see some code, right? Yeah, I told you I had my ass kicked. Don't worry. Look at my defense. Exactly. Tried to be a black bank kid. It didn't quite work out. But yeah, so we're going to have a quick demo. I'll show you how the value changes work, the built-in validation, the composition, and also custom validation, then a magic feature, which is custom async validator. That basically allows you to validate the form while making an asynchronous request to the server or local. All right, OK, so let's have a quick look. I think I'm supposed to do this. OK. Oh, look, I'm on Twitter. Sorry. All right, the first thing we're going to do here is called the OK, so you can't see this. Let me hide it. This is a Zoom thing. Let me open this in a new window, right? So here, I'm just going to show you the first thing I have. What I built is basically I rebuilt Twitter, right? And you remember why I talked about the Reactive Forms has different states that you can watch. So you can see here it's untouched, invalid, and pristine. So for it to be touched, you'd have to interact with the field and leave it. And you can see automatically, because Angular works with RxJX, I don't actually need to listen for the state. It automatically updates the state. So invalid is basically based on the validators, and pristine is if you haven't changed the initial value. So let's have a look at the code before we interact with this. So you can see here what I've done on line 18. I'm basically saying, create me a form control with an initial value that's empty, but also one of the validators I want it to be required. So for this particular form control to be valid, what needs to happen? Based on the required validator? Exactly, it has to have some value. And that's it. But you can also have multiple validators, right? And here you can see I'm using like some observable stuff to just calculate the length because it gives you a value changes property that's basically a RxJS observable. Think of them like events that keep emitting as the value keeps changing. So you can get the current value, get the length, subtract it from 280 characters. I think that's what Twitter allows. And then you can always just automatically get how many characters left. So if we look at this now, you can see now it's valid. And you can see as I type, the numbers are reducing. And you can also see the tweet button suddenly becomes active. And now it's dirty. Dirty basically is once the initial value has changed. So no, even if I come back to empty, it will always be a dirty form. You know that the user has interacted with this form. And how did I make the tweet button disabled? On the HTML side of things, all I've just done is I've attached the standard HTML disabled property, I bound it to a property called invalid from the form control. So this will always be true or false based on all the validators, right? So this is just a simple example. Let's see something a little bit more fleshy. So let's close this guy here, and let's go to this guy here. Open a new window. So what do we have here? So we have some fields here, what's it called? You just need to give us your email and trust us. And you can see each field that you provide here. You can see, so if I say, Sani, I've just given everybody my email. Yep, Sani@sani.com. Pretend you didn't see it. You can see how it's changing. Now it's valid, it's dirty, and it's untouched. Why do you think it's still untouched? Anybody? Exactly, you haven't actually left focus. It's like you actually haven't touched. I touched it. It's crazy. Probably there's a class on philosophy. So for password to be valid, let's see actually what we need. So here you can see I'm using a form group, right? And for password to be valid, what needs to happen? Anybody? Based on the validator on line 22. Say that again?
It has to actually be there.
Yeah, it has to have some value, right? Just required. And the same for the confirm password field, right? So let's go and give it a confirm password field. So I'm just going to type 1, 2, 3 here. But if I type 3, 2, 1 here, they're both valid, right? So technically this form is valid. But do we want that behavior? No. So this is where we create a custom validator on the form group level now. We're overriding the form. We say, I know every guy, like everything in there is valid, right? But here's what I want you to do. I need you to override that. And we do that by basically creating a validator on the group level and say, hey, give me the instance of that form group, check the password field and the confirm password field, and if they don't match, throw out this error. If they match, everything's good, right? Just don't bother. So it's like the false case is good, but the true case is false. It's weird, but yeah. So now, if they don't match, return null. Don't bother. But if they don't match, then return password match true. That's the name of the error. So you can always check for that password match true case. And if you look at the HTML here, we can actually check here to say if has error password match on line 19. So we can always see, does it have that error? We don't need to go and individually check. We can just ask the form group, do you have an error on password match? No? Okay, you're all good. And that's it. So that's sort of like just, if we go back there and like type 1, 2, 3 now, you can see that this field will become valid. So here is my final demo that I'm just quickly gonna show you. This one is a custom async validator. Sometimes I need to query some asynchronous process to validate my form, right? Everything we've done so far has been synchronous, right? Can anybody think of a case where you need to do an asynchronous validation? Maybe what you do at work, or you can think of? Anyone?
If your username is taken.
Username is taken, exactly. You want to make sure, okay, this person is filling this form with a username called man's not hot. Let me see if man's not hot is actually taken so that I don't have to send. And some companies even reserve that for like, I think, a minute while you're filling the form so that somebody else that wants to use man's not hot doesn't, come and just push you off the way. Like a queue, I guess airlines do something like that, right? You have a seat. You're picking the seat. Make sure the seat is there. They give you like, I think, 5 minutes. It depends. If you like one of those like Ryanair, they don't really care. Exactly. They don't really care. But hey, if you got like you're fancy like that. So here, what I'm doing, I've created a form that basically says it's using a API called Zippopotamus. Has anybody heard of Zippopotamus? Zippopotam.us. It's actually the free API that allows you to query postcodes of like I think 40 countries. So yeah, UK and all of that. But I'm actually using the US one. So I've created this form field to only be valid if you live in California. If you don't live in California, you're too broke, can't be delivering to you, sorry. So that kind of thing. But basically now, I'm always querying Zippopotamus to give the Zippopotamus your zip code, as they call it in America, and then I'm getting like some information that it gives. It gives you place, longitude, latitude, and then I'm always making sure that your postcode actually matches, California, and then I'm making that form. So at some point, my form is actually waiting. It's in a state called pending, waiting for the asynchronous requests to succeed. So let's actually test this live. So can anybody think of a non-Californian postcode by any chance? 33145. Okay, 33145. Yep, sorry, gotta live in Beverly Hills. So I think I know the Beverly Hills one, 90210. Don't ask me how I know that. So if you see that, it says, we deliver to your address. And you can have a look at the code. Here, what am I doing? I've created what I call a custom async validator here, state delivery, right? And I'm even saying this async validator has a dependency called HTTP, which is the HTTP client of Angular. That's like in React, I think you use either Fetch API or Axios, I think it's called, right? Yeah, that kind of thing. Just make that connection. Yeah. So, and I'm just basically saying, okay, inject that into this function, and that function is going to return you the instance of the form control, and I'm just saying, go make that HTTP request to there. And I'm using RxJX here, and I'm saying, get the state. If the state is equal to California, what it's returning, then we're good. So we're not going to return anything. But if it's not, then return an error, because it's only when it's not I want to actually return an error. So again, the false case is true, the true case is false. And that's what we're doing. But this is a live API request. Does anybody want to try any other zip codes? Any? 94704. Oh, look at you, fancy. We deliver to you. Fortunately, I'm not delivering anything. You really wouldn't want me to be your delivery guy. Your packages will be late. But yeah, so that kind of like is the gist of what Reactive Forms offer, but there's so much more that they allow you to. This is just literally the entry and allows you to really create complex form-based applications. So let's go back to where I got my ass kicked. How'd you do this? I think I need to move this up, and then now, Bye, Max. All right, so we talked about the value chain, the built-in validation, the composition, the custom validation. Also, I'm going to share this slide, and every single example is available on my Stack Blitz, even like the forms, the bad forms. There's a link in there, so you can go check it out. It's available using the latest version of Angular. And so to get started today, you can, again, go to my Stack Blitz for all the links. You can go to the Angular I/O guides. You can ask me a question on Twitter. I am opinionated, so be careful. I think that's probably a given, so I'm a bit of a nub. But hey, everybody 9 out of 10, like my mom would say. And I also teach with Angular Bootcamp, so if you're interested, feel free to head out there. And yeah, if there are any questions, I'll take them.